So I dove down and dove down and dove down and said, please tell everyone exactly what this means and how it works. And there's an explanation. And it's not going to work. And you're not going to like it. And in the end, oh my gosh, it's about Greg Abbott wanting to be president. Yeah, I tried. You're trying. Try it. Try to listen. Just try to conceptualize what we're being told is exactly how school choice would work. Not the term, not the throwaway language. I mean exactly dollar for dollar, student for student, exactly what it would mean to you, the taxpayer. Just think in those terms. Just try it. And then say, yes or no? You're going to say no. It's stupid. And I'm in favor of, public education model is upside down. I didn't say the people are bad. The model is not healthy. The model is not productive. All models should be rearranged all the time. I'm sorry to nerd out for a second, but public education is an upside down model. And the money flows the wrong way. Money should never flow to VPs. Money should flow to talent. The money doesn't flow in sports to an offensive coordinator. It flows to the quarterback. Public education is reversed. The money flows to the VPs. Nothing should ever flow to a VP in any model. So it's just upside down. It doesn't mean it's horrible. I mean, I'm all for tinkering. I'm all for disruption. Wait until you hear the plan that I'm not even sure the governor of Texas really wants to sell. He just wants to say it because he's got, assuming somebody else ends up in an orange jumpsuit, he's got a different plan. But I think you got to hear it. I think you got to listen. I think you got to take it in and say, you know what, I'd be cool with this or not. And then just start asking real questions, like real questions about real money. That's on the podcast along with other stuff. The podcast is dropped each afternoon. You can get the Jeff Ward Show podcast wherever you download your podcasts. Same with the YouTube channel as well. We post that each afternoon. Subscribe to it. Check it out. The host looks like Shrek, all that stuff. Okay, this is going to be weird. Hang in there. Hang in there. After watching Brock Purdy and the 49ers torch your Dallas Cowboys, I had a thought. I had a thought in the process, and I certainly have had a thought over the last few days about the process. Quarterbacks and art. I can't get out of that space. Arguing about quarterbacks, let's do it this way, trying to argue about quarterbacks is a lot like arguing about art. I can help. I like bizarre art. You would say, that guy's a mess. He's got issues. Well, true. I'm a mess and I've got issues. But I like art, very bizarre art. In fact, this is what made me think of it. The day before Brock Purdy, and the reason why I bring up Brock Purdy, and I'm going to tell you how you can now categorize quarterbacks. I think I can walk people into a interesting and relevant way of categorizing quarterbacks so you can then kind of judge them. Because all we do, all day in media, all day over beers, all day over every Monday, is yell about the quarterbacks, and there's no context to it. There's no categories to it. There's a better way. I'm telling you, there's a better way to have the discussions about the comparisons. And Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy they're the ones that made me think of this. And then I thought about art. So on Saturday, before after the Texas game and before the Cowboys played the 49ers and got their face kicked in, I went to see one of my favorite artists, went to see his art show, and actually got to see him do some work. I love art because I suck at art. I can't do it. I'm fascinated by artists. I think it is amazing. I have a daughter who's an artist, so I took her with me, and we went to see some art and watch him. His last name is Jazz, although it's like Jazz Lusky or something like that, but he was smart enough to go by the term Jazz, and I love his work. It is weird. It is despondent. You might like paintings of boats and flowers. Now, I don't, because that may take talent to paint the boats and flowers, but there's not enough for me. So I get that you want to have there's talented artists, but I need some depth. I need some messed up thinking. I need some darkness. I need some, I want more to it. So my art is described as despondent. I love Jazz's work. It's despondent. It is unbelievably deep and talented, in my opinion. So I was thinking about that. I think, like, how would we argue about our art? Because we're just going to end up in different places. Same thing happens with these quarterbacks, except I can tell you how to categorize them. I can tell you where to put them so you've got some sort of frame of reference. I think that works better. Because Brock Purdy is the case study, along with Dak Prescott, into everybody in my business and many of you having opinions. And I get really sick of not having context. I don't like people not thinking it through. I can think through my art because I get to talk to Jazz, and he tells me exactly what bizarre thing he's thinking of. And I need the same thing with the quarterbacks.
This is the TSN Dallas Cowboys channel.
Wow. Shut up. Okay, so the way to think about quarterbacks, the way to judge them, bad ones, good ones, and in particular, great ones. Here's what I think people need to start doing. Give me a chance here. See if you like it. You have to put them into categories. Instead of just saying, and not too many categories. I know you're going to say, well, Jeff, I just want to argue. I just want to say Dak Prescott sucks, Jeff. Leave me alone. No, I'm not going to leave you alone because I don't get to say that's great art and that's it. Let's go a little bit further than that. Instead of saying Patrick Mahomes is the best ever, or Joe Burrow is the fourth best ever, or Dak Prescott is the 31st best or worst quarterback in the NFL today, do more. Find a place to put them because they do kind of fall into categories. So I can't describe in great detail. I can try. You're going to say, Bud, do you do acid? And I'm going to say, no, I don't. I'm just weird. It's hard for me to describe my taste in art, but I can make the quarterback debate easier and I think more understandable. Here's how. You create a category. 2 categories. Only need 2. Watching Brock Purdy, who is now in conversation to be an MVP. The guy is putting up ridiculous numbers. He's not thrown an interception. He carved Dallas up like he's carved up everyone else. There is no denying he's got talent. There's no denying that there's a good arm in there. There's no denying there's a good brain in there. He might be the MVP. Brock Purdy, he just happens to play for San Francisco, which brings this thing into focus more. He is playing like, and has a skill set like, and teammates around him like Joe Montana. It's uncanny. I don't know how many times during the San Francisco-Dallas game I said, my gosh, this looks just like a San Francisco team when they're playing really good Dallas teams, except those were better than the one the other night. And it looks the same. It's unbelievable how similar that team of the other night, right now, present day, with Brock Purdy and all that's around him, is just like the Montana teams with Jerry Rice and Tom Rathman and Bill Walsh and blah, blah, blah. It's unbelievable. And then I started to think. As I've stopped thinking about art, I thought, wait a second. So he's got to go in a category because Montana belongs in a category. And I know Montana belongs in a category because Joe Montana recently, when asked who's the best quarterback to ever play, he didn't hesitate. He said Dan Marino. Easily. He then described why he thought Dan Marino was the best quarterback ever. But there's different players, different styles, different teammates around him with different outcomes. So they need to have their own categories. Right? So you've got a Joe Montana, Tom Brady category. What does that mean exactly, Jeff? All right, well, I'm going to tell you. We're always looking for who's the next. Who's the next Montana? Who's the next Brady? Blah, blah, right? It is the most talked about position in all of sports, quarterback. It is the most ridiculous conversation that goes on almost every single day and certainly on Mondays. Who's the next Joe Montana? Who's the next Tom Brady? Oh my gosh, it must be Brock Purdy. Yeah, he's pretty close. Who's the next Dan Marino? Well, that's a different category by itself. So you create a category of Montana and Brady, and then you have a category of Marino because they did different things in different ways with completely different teams. Dan Marino never had what Joe Montana had. Dan Marino never had what Brock Purdy has. Justin Herbert, who has similar skill set to Dan Marino, he plays for the Chargers. None of you care, none of you pay attention, but he is putting up ridiculous numbers. He's never going to have what Brock Purdy has. He's the Dan Marino of 2023, in other words. So that's the way I do it. Montana was a perfect fit for the 49ers. Or Bill Walsh put players around Montana that made it all work perfectly, or stuck Montana in there with the players and it all worked. Either way, it was perfect surroundings. He played the way they needed. Tom Brady didn't even have what Montana had. So Montana and Brady in this one category, if you want to look at it this way, think of it this way. They are on really, really good teams. They make them great. Does that make them great quarterbacks? Well, of course it does. Yeah. Brock Purdy has made the 49ers great. If you stuck Dak Prescott in there, they'd be really good still. But Montana made them great. Brock Purdy makes them great. Brady made the teams around him great. They were good teams to start with. They weren't trash. They weren't stuck like Dan Marino was stuck. They are great players who've taken really good teams and made them great teams. Brock Purdy is a really, really good quarterback with a skill set like Joe Montana's, who's turning his team into a great team. But Marino never has that. Joe Burrow's not going to have that. Justin Herbert's not going to have that. Jim Kelly didn't have it. Warren Moon didn't have it. And they're great players. So it's completely ridiculous to start to compare them. Is this nerdy enough? Is everyone okay? You want me to go back into despondent art? You know, the thing about jazz and his art is I'm really into straight edges, but they were very circular patterns with all these eyeballs. And I can't believe that I fall in love with these circular patterns in his art. But so there, take that. So, Dan Marino is the best passer to ever play the game, in my opinion. Joe Montana and Tom Brady played quarterback better than anyone ever. They just happen to be on completely different kinds of teams, right? What a setup. So the categories for these quarterbacks, you want to do it is you create this group of Brady and Montana, of which you start to stick Brock Purdy in there. You stick Troy Aikman in there. Really good quarterback, borderline, you can say great quarterback on great, who made his team great. They didn't win as far as they could because he was built perfectly. It'd be unfair to compare Dan Marino to Troy Aikman because of completely different surroundings. Just like it's unfair to compare Justin Herbert to Brock Purdy. They're completely different surroundings. They're going to be different outcomes. Warren Moon, if you stuck him with, instead of Joe Montana, you could stick him with the 49ers, the outcomes would be different for Warren Moon. But you can't say one is necessarily better than the other. So the best in the game now, in my opinion, are Mahomes, Burrow, and Jalen Hurts. They get in that category of being on really good teams that they can make great. Got it? They're in the Brady-Montana category. Then you've got a group of players in the greatest age of quarterback play that are in that Dan Marino category. And that is Justin Herbert. It might be Trevor Lawrence. And these are really good quarterbacks who turn their teams into really good teams, but they're just not enough there to win championships. And everyone wants to define quarterbacks by championships, and Joe Montana didn't do it. He defined Dan Marino is the best player of all time, but he doesn't have any championships. Joe Burrow is going to follow the same path. So you got to stick him in that other place. You've got to separate the two. You can't continue to say, well, Purdy's better than Burrow. No. They've just got different circumstances. So the Marino category is pretty interesting. There's all these really, really good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks who just stuck in places where they're eventually not going to be able to do what Brock Purdy is doing. But when you think about it and you watch what Purdy did to the Cowboys and what the 49ers did, and you think about, oh my, that looks exactly like Joe Montana playing with Rice and Taylor and Rathman and Ronnie Lott and all those people. And then you're going to watch Justin Herbert play against the Cowboys, and you're going to see this unbelievable talent, and he's going to light them up, and he's going to put up ridiculous numbers. He's the guy that went 31 of 35 for 440 yards recently. And you're going to watch him play and tell me this. You put him in the category and you say, wow, that guy looks like Dan Marino out there. There's their space. There's their categories. Now you got the ones that suck. You got the ones that underachieve. Yeah. But the best ones in the game, you got to be fair to the whole argument and just put them in those different places. Because some of these guys, I don't know that Herbert will ever win a championship. I don't know that Burrow probably will never win a championship. The window is closing. But there's no way you're ever going to look back and say, well, he's not any good. No. He just doesn't have what Brock Purdy has.